There's a kind of intuition you develop when you work nights at a motel long enough. It isn't mystical or dramatic, it's just pattern recognition that your brain runs faster than your conscious mind can articulate. You check in enough people at 2 in the morning and you start to understand what normal looks like, even at abnormal hours. The truckers who are just exhausted, the couples who are either cheating or fighting or both, the families doing a long road trip who smell like fast food and travel-worn patients, the business people who treat the front desk like an ATM, impersonal, transactional, no eye contact necessary. Normal has 1,000 different faces, and after 3 years of overnight shifts at the Sunridge Motor Inn just off I-40 outside Amarillo, Texas, I knew most of them by heart. Which is why I knew the moment he walked through the door on that Tuesday night in February that something was wrong. My name is Jess. I was 26 years old, working the 11 to 7 shift at a motel that had seen better decades. The Sunridge wasn't a terrible place. It was clean enough. It was cheap. It sat at a freeway exit that got decent traffic from long-haul drivers and people traveling between Albuquerque and Oklahoma City. My manager, a soft-spoken man named Gerald, who I genuinely liked, ran the place with minimal drama. Most nights were boring in the way I'd grown to appreciate. Quiet lobby, bad lobby TV, the occasional odd guest, a lot of paperwork. It was 1:47 a.m. when the man walked in. He was somewhere in his 40s, medium height, wearing a canvas jacket that was too light for a February night that had dropped into the low 30s. He had dark hair, a close beard, and he walked to the desk quickly, not urgently, not rushing, but with a kind of deliberate speed that felt rehearsed, like he had thought about how to walk in here and was executing that plan. He asked for a room. Cash, he said, before I had even asked about payment. People pay cash at motels all the time. I want to be clear about that. It's not unusual, it's not inherently suspicious, and if cash alone had been the thing, I would not have given him a second thought. What I noticed was everything around the cash. The way he placed the bills on the counter, already counted and folded, exact amount for one night, like he had prepared it in advance. The way he answered my standard questions, name, vehicle, make, and model for the parking lot record, with a slight half-second delay each time, the delay of someone retrieving an answer rather than simply knowing it. The way his eyes, when they did meet mine, moved away again instantly, not with the discomfort of a shy person, but with the careful discipline of someone who had reminded himself not to hold eye contact. I gave him room 116, ground floor, east wing, away from the highway-facing rooms. He took the keycard, said "thank you" in a voice that was controlled and quiet, and walked out. I stood at the desk and I felt, and I know how this sounds, cold. Not the building cold, though it was drafty that night. Something internal, the particular cold of wrongness. I tried to talk myself out of it. I ran through the ordinary explanations. He was tired, he was an introvert, he was having a rough night and didn't feel like small talk. He'd paid cash because he didn't want the charge on a statement. That's a very common and very often benign reason. The pre-counted bills might just mean he was organized. I watched the parking lot camera feed on the monitor behind the desk. He had parked near the edge of the lot, away from the light, but a lot of people do that, especially truckers who don't want the lot lights affecting their sleep. He was driving a dark blue sedan, mid-size, which matched what he'd told me. I watched him walk to his room. He had no luggage, no bag of any kind. People check into motels with no luggage. Usually it means they're staying one night and traveling light, or they're local and just need a room for reasons of their own. It's not unusual. But combined with everything else, it sat on me like a stone. I spent about 40 minutes alternating between trying to dismiss it and trying to identify exactly what was making me so uneasy. Around 2:30, I got up and walked through the East Wing corridor on the pretense of checking that the ice machine near the stairwell was functioning, something I did regularly on night shifts anyway. I walked slowly past room 116. I heard nothing. That was not itself strange. But on my way back past, I noticed something. The gap under the door of room 116. Motel doors have that gap. You can see if the light's on inside. The light was on. Not the overhead, which tends to create a brighter, more uniform glow under the door. This was dimmer, yellower. The bedside lamp, probably. Which meant he was awake at 2:30 in the morning, which was fine. Which meant nothing on its own. Except there was something else. I almost didn't catch it. Under the door, visible in the thin strip of light, something dark, irregular, spread unevenly across the floor near the door. I kept walking. I did not stop. I went back to the desk and I sat down, and my heart was going faster than it should have been, and I tried to think clearly. The dark spread could have been anything. A towel he'd dropped, his jacket, a spill. I was aware with the part of my brain trying to keep things reasonable, but I was in danger of constructing a narrative out of ambiguous observations, and that the responsible thing to do was not to act on a feeling. But here is what I kept coming back to. He had no luggage, no bag. Nothing to change into, nothing to wash up with beyond what the motel provided. Why would he have a jacket off and on the floor near the door at 2:30 in the morning when he'd walked in wearing it against the cold? I picked up the phone at the desk and I called 911. I want to describe that moment honestly, because it was not clean or confident. My hand was not steady. I second-guessed myself in the 4 seconds between dialing and the dispatcher picking up. I was almost certain I was about to waste law enforcement time and embarrass myself and potentially cause a very tired, very normal traveler to be woken up and questioned because I had let my night shift brain run wild. The dispatcher was calm and professional. I told her I was the night desk at the Sunridge Motor Inn, that I had a guest in room 116 who had checked in under circumstances I found concerning, and that I had observed something under the door of his room that I could not explain, and that was making me uneasy. I told her I might be completely wrong. I told her I just felt like someone needed to know. She asked me a series of questions. Did I feel I was in immediate danger? No. Did I have reason to believe a crime was in progress? I told her honestly I didn't know. I had a feeling. She told me she would send a patrol unit to do a non-emergency welfare check, and that they would be there within 20 minutes. They arrived in 14. 2 officers, a man and a woman, both calm, both treating my concerns seriously without being alarming about it. I walked them to the east wing. The woman officer knocked on the door of room 116. She announced herself as Amarillo PD and said she was conducting a routine check. There was a pause of about 5 seconds. Then the door opened. What happened in the next few minutes is something I have replayed many times and which I will not describe in complete detail, partly because some of it became part of a legal proceeding, and partly because, even now, it is difficult to put in full sentences. The short version is this. The man in room 116 was not alone. There was a woman with him. She was alive, but she had been badly hurt, and she was restrained, and when the door opened and she saw the officers, she began to cry in a way that I could hear from where I was standing 15 feet down the hall, a kind of crying that I had never heard before, and which I understood immediately was relief. The man was placed in handcuffs on the walkway outside the room. He did not resist. He looked in that moment almost deflated, like someone whose plan had simply run out. I found out later through what eventually became public record as the case proceeded, the broader shape of what had happened. The woman had been reported missing from her family 2 days earlier from a town about 4 hours west. She and the man had a prior relationship. He had taken her from a parking lot.
He had driven east, stopping once before Amarillo at a different location, and had brought her to the Sunridge. I think about the dark spread under the door sometimes. I learned later it had been her coat, which she had managed to push toward the door at some point during the night. Whether intentionally or not, I genuinely don't know. I've thought about that a lot. Whether she was trying to signal something, trying to push something toward the outside world. Whether she heard me walking past and felt something. I don't know. What I know is that she was found. She went home to her family. The man was charged and, as of the last time I checked court records, convicted. I stayed at the Sunridge for another year after that night, before I eventually moved on to something else. Gerald, my manager, was extraordinarily kind about the whole thing. He called me personally the day after and didn't say much, just that I had done the right thing and that he was proud of me, and that the rest of the week was covered if I needed some time. I did take a few days. People ask me sometimes what made me call. I try to explain the pattern recognition thing, the compilation of small signals that don't compute. The cash, the eye contact, the timing, the jacket, the no luggage. None of it is a crime. All of it assembled at 2 a.m. by a brain that had spent 3 years learning what normal looked like, added up to something that felt like a door I couldn't leave shut. I am not a hero. I want to be really clear about that. The officers were the ones who knocked on the door. The investigators were the ones who built the case. I made a phone call that I almost didn't make because I was afraid of being wrong and looking foolish. That fear of looking foolish almost stopped me from making the most important call of my life. If you take nothing else, if something feels wrong, and you have a way to quietly put it in the hands of people whose job it is to check, do it. You do not have to be certain. You do not have to have proof. You just have to make the call. I have never regretted making it. I have only ever thought about what would have happened if I hadn't. I still don't sleep especially well on nights when it's cold and the wind is up, and I think about dark corridors and thin strips of light under doors. I think I probably never will entirely. I've made a kind of peace with that. Some things leave a permanent mark, and you just learn to carry them in a way that doesn't crush you. She sent me a card about 8 months later. It was short. She said she didn't know how to say what she wanted to say, and that she hoped I knew anyway. I keep it in my kitchen drawer, underneath the takeout menus and the spare batteries and the odds and ends that accumulate in every kitchen drawer. Sometimes I open the drawer and see it, just the corner of the envelope, and I close it again, and I go about my day. That's enough. That's more than enough.